who am I? Let's start with the who am I. I am a voice that was broken. I am a identity that was stolen. I was a lost soul and a lost child. I didn't know that until I hit my 30s and I decided and I became innately aware that I wanted more. I just realized that there's got to be more to life than sitting in this broken cycle, in this broken system of not being seen, not being heard, not being loved, and not knowing the essence of who I am. And so that is where really my journey started taking off, was really not just asking the question, who am I? But asking the question, what am I? And being curious enough, being bold enough, and being courageous enough to not just ask those questions, but to sit in them and to really get curious enough to discover the answer. I haven't always been Christian. And when I was growing up, Christianity was weaponized. It was weaponized by my grandmother. It was weaponized by my father. Religion really was. I was this little girl that was robbed of her femininity because I had this father that he literally portrayed that he liked boys better. And he did this by abusing my mother physically and mentally. He enslaved us. And, I'm not saying that femininity in the role of a woman is enslavement, but I think that when you are living under a roof of a dictator, it can be. And so we were taught as women, you're good enough to cook and you're good enough to clean and you're good enough to serve. But outside of that, you're not good enough for anything else, because excelling academically or not excelling academically, you were frowned upon. You were not celebrated. You weren't even barely tolerated. And so at a very young age, I realized that, God, because my dad was my God, he loved boys better. And so it's not that I didn't want to be woman. I didn't want to be feminine. I just wanted to be safe. I wanted to survive. I wanted to breathe. I wanted to understand and feel my laughter. I wanted to experience my voice. And so in my mind, the safest thing at 5 years old was to be a boy. I loved my dad and I loved my brothers, and I did everything they did. When my brothers got ready to go play football or wrestling, or they wanted to play with their action figures, whatever it was, I was there. My dad could not leave the house without me. I was there because the safest place was under his wing. If I become a part of him and innately close to him, maybe he wouldn't harm me. Maybe he would love me more. If I was rough and tough and big and bad and bold and strong, like my brothers, maybe I don't have to worry about me being an outcast, me being an outlier, me being abused mentally and physically. And so I gave up my femininity, I gave up my voice, and I gave up my identity to survive. What I didn't realize is that by giving it up, I also learned to hate it. I hated everything about being a woman. I thought women were weak. I didn't like being around women. I didn't like makeup. I just did not like anything girl. Because God didn't like anything girl. Because God was my dad. And so I remember getting freshman year of high school. I still hadn't hit puberty because I entered school when I was really young. And I remember, actually not my freshman, my sophomore year, I realized I was transforming. I had a nervous breakdown. I was pretty upset about it because in my naivety, I still thought it was possible for me to be a boy. And so when my body started transforming, I didn't understand it. And I remember just going through high school sexually confused, and not sexually confused in the sense of I was attracted to women. I was attracted to men, but I did not want to be a woman. So it was just really weird. I went through an entire identity crisis. I say all that to say that once I dropped out of high school, I got into some really bad relationships where the repetitive generational curse cycle that I had lived through, I found myself in. I was a very dominant woman because I still brought that very tomboyish masculine behavior. I wanted love so much, I made some really bad choices with some partners. So I would also look for very masculine men that also seemingly through their actions did not respect and love women. And so I just kept on dating my dad. It was brutal. It was awful. There were a couple different times I almost lost my life. I ended up getting pregnant at 19. And my daughter, I have 3 now, but at the time, my daughter was my little gift because she's the one that brought that piece of femininity back. I did not want her to be me. And so I knew it was my responsibility to love her in a different kind of way than the way that I was exposed to doing. And so I realized that I had to let femininity come back in. In doing so, I started to see women differently. I started to see myself differently. I started to separate and almost divorce the thinking that I had adopted in order to survive, the thinking that women were weak, the thinking that women, we are slaves, the thinking that we will never be good enough, the thinking that my voice didn't matter, the thinking that I wasn't smart. Everything that was used to enslave me and keep me small, I learned that I had to release. Because if I wanted bigger and better for my daughter, I had to believe that as a woman, we were capable of bigger and better. And so I started to grow up with her. And that's sad to say. I'm a 19-year-old with a baby. And I did not realize at 19, I had become stagnant in the human growth development process, that I had to take parenting myself into my own hands. And so I grew up with my daughter because I had to discover myself while pouring into her. I continued until, it was me and her until I was about 22 years old. And that's when I met my husband. Thank God, he loved me. He loved me for me. He was probably one of the first men that I had ever met that first never told me to shut up. To this day, we've been together for 15 years. Never told me to shut up. I didn't even think that was possible. He listened. He sat and he listened. He's listened to my story over and over and over again. And he always celebrated me and said that, I want you to discover more of you, not the surviving you, not the rough and tough you, not the tomboyish you, but more of you as a woman. I need you to find peace in that. And so I think sometimes we need people to speak life into us when others have taken it from us. And that's okay. And there's strength in that. But he didn't heal me. There was an expectation that now I'm with this man and he's going to heal me, but my husband didn't heal me. See, healing is an upward spiral, and healing is a choice that you make and that you allow your higher power, which for me is God, to do. And it doesn't just happen overnight. It's like an onion. Healing happens in layers. And I think that, there's this phrase, and I don't know if I'm going to say it correctly. When the student is ready, the master appears. I think the same thing happens with healing. When you are actually ready, the healing will appear, because healing is work. I think a lot of times we think that healing is beautiful. It's rainbows and roses, but it's not. Healing is the crisis. Healing is the deconstruction. Healing is the breaking. I think that healing, it's a give and take. So if we talk about healing at the heart level, right? I have to give up the spaces and places in my heart of unforgiveness, of hate, of anger, of abuse, in order to make room for the beautiful parts. Because you can't have both. And I think that that's the part of healing that we don't know. And I think a lot of times, especially as victors that are coming from victimhood, we are also looking for outward healing, right? We're looking for the Supermans and Superwomans. That was another thing I had to realize, was that I wasn't waiting on Superman or Superwoman. They weren't coming. I wasn't waiting for these amazing parents to come back and say sorry and to be aware of how they broke me. I was waiting to realize, you're not waiting on anybody. You're waiting on you to choose to heal. You're waiting on you to wake up and do the right hard thing. You're waiting on you to say, you got to speak up. You're waiting on you to say, hey, what happened to me wasn't right. Let's acknowledge that first. What you went through, your voice being silenced, you being robbed of your identity, it wasn't right. Can we start there? Now that we know it wasn't right, what are we going to do about it? Let's discover who we are. Let's put in the work. Let's get our reps up. Let's work it out. Let's identify how other bad behaviors have manifested in you. And so I realized that healing means that you become your own project. You stop looking for projects out here and you realize that you are the project. I got older and God found me in one of my most broken moments. I was angry. Before I even met my husband, I had just got out of this really toxic, bitter, bad relationship. And some Jehovah's Witnesses, they were on the lawn. I didn't know they were Jehovah's Witnesses at first. I just thought they were a whole bunch of old ladies just hanging out on the lawn. I was bitter and I was angry. And I was going to go out there and I was going to let them know who I was. So I went out there with a mission. I was going to cuss them out and ask them why they were standing on this lawn. And before I knew it, a young lady, she turned around, and I promise you, she had such an angelic smile on her, like she was love. She was love. And I just remember looking at her, and I'm telling you, I think love does conquer all, because I did not say one mean, bad thing to her. I just remember looking at her and almost being in shock. And she just saying to me, "Hey, how are you?" And I was like, still a little bit bitter, a little bit angry. I was like, "I'm doing good." And she was just like, "Oh, I just want to know, do you know Jesus?" And when she said Jesus, because again, Christianity, Jesus, and all of them were weaponized when I was little, I was a little angry. And I said, "I don't want to know Jesus. I don't care about Jesus." Instead of her being offended, she kind of was just like, "That's really interesting. Like, may I ask what is your issue?" And I didn't want to really spend time with her. So I said, "I just got a lot of questions and I don't understand it. And I just, I don't really care about Jesus, So she was limited on her time. And she said, "Look, I would love to come back tomorrow and spend some time with you, understanding your questions. Would that be okay with you?" I don't know why I said yes. And I think it was because of her just beautiful presence, her energy. I was dark. You know what I'm saying? I was darkness. And I think that a lot of times the dark is attracted to the light, and she was light in that moment, unknowingly, but she was light. So I automatically said yes, because I was in despair. I was hopeless. I was not okay. And she came back with this little black Bible that I still have to this day. And she let me know she was Jehovah's Witness, which I kind of chuckled because, we're taught that we're supposed to run from them. We're taught that we're supposed to hide from them. But what we're not taught is that sometimes they can save you and change your life around. And so she brought that little black book and a watchtower and another book. It was beige. And she asked me what my issue was. And you know what my biggest issue with Jesus was? Is that I didn't believe that he loved me. I didn't believe that he was for me. I didn't even know who he was. All I knew is my God was my dad. And he was hateful. He was mean. He was brutal. He was violent. And he had good days sometimes. And so we studied. I asked all my silly, crazy questions. I told her everything I was upset about. And she over and over again pointed me into that Bible and showed me things. I started to realize that I could let go of the fear of my father and let go of the anger, but most importantly, let go of thinking that he's the best kind of love out there, and I could desperately hang on to God and be filled. Fast forward now to roughly about 8 years later, I asked the question of, man, who am I and what am I? Because I was tired. I was tired of broken systems. I was tired of broken relationships. I was tired of broken finances. I'm like, you would get a little high and then you would get shot down and you'd crash back to the bottom. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm not a stupid woman. I think I'm pretty smart. Yes, I got my GED, but then I went back and got my bachelor's in business management, then went back and got my associate's in biblical studies, ended up going and getting my certification, ICF certification in trauma-informed life coaching. And so I went back and I got all this skill set, but I was not living the true essence of who I was. That didn't make me feel okay. I just remember thinking to myself, man, if I die tomorrow, I'm going to be sad. Like, I love my kids, but if I die tomorrow, I'm going to be sad because life really sucks. Like, I want to say life is great, but it's sucking. And it's sucking because I'm not being me and I don't even know who I am. So I remember I was called to this fast. I've never fasted before. I've heard of fasts, Ramadan and the Daniel's fast and different things like that. But I had never done it. And so it was just like, okay, you're going to do this fast. This is Holy Spirit conversation, 3 a.m. I'm like, okay, I'm fasting. What are we fasting from? And it was like, yeah, you're going to fast from all foods outside of fruits and vegetables. And I was like, well, that's a lot, because I was a foodie. I was a food addict. I didn't know it. I didn't know that food could be a drug. And so I went from smoking cigarettes in my teens to, adopting food, calling myself this modern day foodie. I just love food. I love flavors, but no, I like to numb. I like to escape reality by different flavor profiles. I didn't understand at the time why it was food, but looking back, I'm like, I get why it was food, because I'm going to take away from you everything that you can numb from or numb with. And so the next thing was like, okay, no more secular music. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? I love the R&B. It was like, yeah, that's the problem. You allow the music to also use it to numb, but also to manipulate your emotions. And I was like, ooh, okay, that's really interesting. So what was interesting is he called me to go on a fast and he took away everything that I could consume. See, a lot of times when we talk about consumption, we think only food, but no, you consume through your ears, you consume through your eyes, you consume through your mouth, you also consume through your spirit. So we went food, only fruits and vegetables, secular music. We also did TV. And then it got a little bit deeper because then it was just like, oh, we're also going to separate you from your friends. And so I was like, oh, so we're going into like the wilderness. This is truly isolation. And it was like, yeah. And I think a lot of times in Christianity, we say this thing of, the devil's at you. When you don't be isolated, because that's when the devil's trying to get you. But the thing is sometimes God calls you into isolation. I called it the wilderness because Jesus went there a lot of times, because he's getting ready to do a new thing in you. Sometimes he isolates you and separates you from the noise because he's trying to talk to you. That's exactly what happened. I thought it was only a 30, 40-day fast, but it ended up being 90 days. The first couple weeks were hard because I was detoxing. The detoxing was hard. And I was detoxing from the world completely. He took everything away from me. The instructions in it was to get quiet, which was so weird to me, was to get quiet and to be intentional. So I went and grabbed like an empty journal, and I would start it off with 5 minutes. I would just sit on the ground after I would read my Bible, and I would just be like, okay, I'm going to sit here. It's going to be hard. And I put a timer on. I'm like, and I'm just going to just sit. And it was like, if something came up that really would like stop me from just being quiet, from like, I got to do laundry, I would go and write that down in the journal. The journal was to take the scattered thoughts, or the thoughts that just had no placement there because of ADD or ADHD, whatever you want to call it, or squirrel moments. I would write them to the side. I did that for roughly about 2 weeks. We went from 5 minutes to 15 minutes to 30 minutes to 40 minutes. The very first thing that I was gifted with in this fast was, I love you. I heard I love you. And it didn't scare me. It caught me off guard because I wasn't anticipating hearing I love you. And then I was just like, wait, what? And it was like, I love you. Not your mom, not your dad, not your sisters, not your brothers, not your boyfriends, not your kids, not your job, not the finances, not that. I love you. I love you because I know everything about you. I love you because I know every dirty little secret about you. I love you because I know the good and the bad, the dark and the light. I love you because also I've never left you. There's not been one day in your entire life that I've ever left. I can promise to be here today, and I can promise that I was there in the past, but I also can promise that I'll be there every single moment of the future. And that was the first time I realized that I really was loved. I also not only realized I was loved, I realized that I now had access to a love that nobody in this entire world could ever take from me. I'd never felt that before. I've cried, but I had never wept. And I had never wept at a spirit level, at a soul level. That was different. And I may be exaggerating, but that's okay. But I really think I was on that floor crying from a spirit level, a soul level, for about 2.5 hours. When I tell you that every uncried tear came out of me, I was defeated in the best kind of way. The best kind of way, I was defeated. My God broke me down all the way with love. 2 weeks after that, remember asking, okay, you love me. Who am I and what am I? And I'm a violinist. I had been playing the violin since I've been in 4th grade. So I love the fact that he used this analogy, and it was just like, you're an instrument. And I was like, wait, what? I'm an instrument? That sounds so dumb, right? And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? What do you mean? And so what happened is the scripture of abide in me and I'll abide in you. I am the vine and you are the branch. It all started making sense. All these scriptures that I had been reading started making sense of, I've already equipped you. You've got everything that you need before ever you ask. Like, you are the resource, the source. That all this started coming up, and I was like, wait, I'm an instrument. See, if I brought my violin right now, if I opened up my case, typically an instrument has everything that it needs, right? So a violin has the strings, it has the bridge, it has the pegs, it has the bow, it has the rosin, it has everything, right? It is ready, it is equipped. But what is it missing? It's missing the artist. And that's what God was telling me. I woven you perfectly in your mother's womb. You're perfect. You've always been perfect. You were just missing me. I'm the artiste to play you. That's when I realized I'm not supposed to be silenced. I'm not supposed to sit behind a desk working a 9 to 5. That wasn't it. What's my melody? What does that mean? What's the melody that you put inside of me? And when I asked that question, what was revealed to me was this. I'm going to use you to reach and teach women. while at the same time, I'm going to do a work and a healing in you while touching the lives of your daughters. And then I realized what instrument I was. See, we all are a part of one body. We do have a purpose. But the thing is that Superman and Superwoman are not going to fly down and say, hey, this is your purpose. You have to get curious enough to figure that out. You've got to get curious enough to ask the question. You've got to get curious enough to want and desire the answer. You have to get still enough to ask the question. I was watching this video of this guy the other day, and he said something. He said, if I want to take advantage of a woman, what do? I keep her entertained and I keep her drugged. He's like, do you guys not realize that you guys live in a world right now where you guys are entertained and drugged? That was so profound to me because I started to realize I can keep you from your identity as long as I can keep you entertained and drugged. I can keep you from your healing as long as I keep you entertained and drugged. I can keep you from the best version of yourself as long as I keep you entertained and drugged. And sometimes entertainment is really stress and confusion. I say all that to say it was in those still moments. It was in the wilderness. It was in the surrender of the things today that I was given. I was blessed. I was gifted with purpose, direction, identity, a voice, and the start of my healing. It didn't come from mom. It didn't come from dad. It didn't come from husband. It didn't come from kids. It didn't come from finances. It didn't come from a job. It came from in here and the choice and the decision of I want to heal. I want to know who I am. I want to live. In the today, I don't work a 9-to-5. In the today, I'm a business owner. I own a trauma-informed life coaching practice. And I also own a podcast. We capture beautiful stories and testimonies of trailblazing women that have gone from trauma to healing. Where I'm at today is it's really important that I show up every day working on my own healing, but inspiring other women to heal. Like, I'll be really honest, since February, I've lost 45 pounds. I was significantly overweight. My health was significantly declining. If you ask that version of me, I'm healed. I'm healing. I've been doing the work. And I had been. I've been doing it on a spiritual level. I've been doing it on a mental level, but I hadn't done it on a physical level. Again, it was one of those 3 a.m. moments where it was just like, I thought, oh, okay, we'll just heal the mind. We'll heal the spirit, because I didn't want to heal the body, because I would look at the body and I'd be like, I was ashamed. I was humiliated. I had already given up on the body. I was scared and I knew it was going to hurt. And remember, again, healing is in the breaking. I didn't want it. And the thing is women don't need to just hear you say you're healed. Can they see it? Can we talk about them seeing it? And I was like, okay, God, let's do it. Like, you know what? You have shown up and you have done a marvelous thing in me and through me in other areas. So I had to do it. Healing, on a physical level has been so transformative here lately, because I thought this whole entire time while he was trying to heal me physically that I was already done spiritually and mentally. No, it's different. Every day I pick the right hard thing, which is to get on that elliptical, to go hit those weights and everything like that. And as much as I've seen a 45-pound difference, and I'm seeing that my muscles defined, my mind is shifting. My spirit is shifting. My intellect is shifting. The breakthroughs that I'm experiencing in the gym, I start seeing the breakthroughs happen in my mind, in my spirit, in my family, in my kids. I didn't know I was numbing with food. Like, let me tell you something. I didn't know I was numbing with food. I thought that when I stopped smoking cigarettes, I was like, oh, I'm great. I'm not an addict. Like, not saying that I turned up my nose, but I didn't know that food was my kryptonite. I didn't know food was my drug. I was using food to control my emotions. When I started working out and choosing not to go to the pantry all day long and snack and eat fruit roll-ups and Oreo cookies and Biscoff cookie butter. And I started picking, let's eat a banana and let's go do 45 minutes on the elliptical. I started to learn to regulate my emotions. Yeah, it's hard, but it's hard because you're not numbing. You're now sitting in your emotions and you're starting to realize, like, you know what? My emotions don't need to control me. I can control them, which means that now I can start actually thinking through. Healing is your mission. And the best thing about it is that you don't need all the answers. You just got to make the choice, be curious enough, and realize that in essence, you actually don't need to do it all on your own. Resources will be sent. And sometimes those resources, they're already inside of you.